So Mitch, I want to say to everybody, Secretary Murphy came on last year, and the Honorable Patrick Murphy, he joined us as on our board of advisors, like so many other great folks have. We're really proud to have him. We're really honored to have him be part of our organization. His service to our nation has been outstanding, and his service to us has been outstanding. And we appreciate him being part of this program today. I certainly hope that he'll be able to join us here in a second, but this was just a quick shout out and a thank you to him and to he and all of his team, like Dean Thomas. I want to thank all of them for their participation in the past events and this current one. And if he is unable to join us, I have great faith that you'll be able to take tee this conversation up between the two generals. We know we're in good hands with you, sir. And I want to thank you and turn it back over to you. And I hope you have a great session.
All right. Thank you, David. And I'll just echo your comments regarding Secretary Murphy. He's been a true supporter of the cause and a true supporter of America's Future Series as recently as just last week when he joined us for the National Security Pitch Day. And I hope he will be with us shortly. But I will go ahead and proceed with introductions of our special guests. General Mike Murray and General Sir Mark Carlton Smith. Do I have both gentlemen aboard? I can see General Murray.
You have at least one, Mitch.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
I am great today. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. The sun's coming up. It's going to be a great day. And there is General Sir Mark Carlton Smith.
Mitch, good morning to all of you out in Conus. Yes, it's a bright sunny day. I hope that the sunlight pouring in through the window behind me isn't distracting. But good to be on board. Thank you.
Well, great to have you. The sun's coming up. I think the chickens are finally getting busy in the roost. So I think we can move on with some business. If you gentlemen don't mind, I'd like to read a couple of quick bios, give folks a little background on both of you, and I'll start with you, General Sir Mark Carlton Smith, 41st Chief of the General Staff. General Sir Mark Carlton Smith has served as the professional head of the British Army since June 2018. He joined the Army on a university cadetship in 1982 and was commissioned in the 1st Battalion Irish Guards. Since then, he has held numerous regimental duty and higher staff assignments, served in multiple combat zones, and commanded at all levels of the British Army. Prior to assuming his current role, he served as Director Special Forces and later as Director Strategy at Army Headquarters. Again, welcome, General Sir Mark Carlton Smith. Next, it's my pleasure to introduce General Mike Murray. General, no stranger to the America's Future Series. It's good to see you again. A little bit about you for our folks that are joining today. General Murray assumed command of the Army Futures Command in the summer of 2018 when the headquarters was established in Austin, Texas, a little south of where I'm at this morning. A graduate of The Ohio State University and commissioned as an infantry officer, General Murray has served and commanded in leadership positions from company through division command, including multiple combat deployments to Afghanistan and Iraq. Prior to the Army Futures Command, General Murray served as Deputy Chief of Staff, Army G8, responsible for matching resources to the defense strategy and the Army plan. Welcome, General Murray.
Thank you, Mitch. I appreciate that.
All right. Yes, we're going to be moving right along. I guess Secretary Murphy has not joined us yet. David?
No, sir.
He has not.
So adapt and overcome, like our Marine friends would tell us.
There he is.
You are safe, sir.
That Secretary Murphy is what you call just in time.
Hey, Mitch, good to be with you. Hey, Mike, how are you?
It's great to have you, sir. Look, if I may, I'm going to offer the quick introduction of you. Again, it's great to see you. Before you came on, I said it's just been a week now since we saw you at National Security Pitch Day, having a chat with Colonel Nathan Diller. It's great to have you back, and it's great to have Colonel Diller back. He's toward the back end of today's program. So the Honorable Patrick J. Murphy joined the Army at age 19, launching a lifelong commitment to our nation's military and veterans. Patrick has served as a soldier, America's first Iraq War veteran elected to Congress, and the 33rd Undersecretary of the Army. Today, Secretary Murphy continues to advocate and empower through his work in the public and private sectors. As a veteranpreneur, he spearheads a wide range of business interests and offers veterans the opportunity to launch their own dreams by investing in their companies. As a public speaker and media executive, Secretary Murphy helps amplify the voices and experiences of veterans on MSNBC, CBS, the Discovery Network, and pretty much everywhere he goes. Welcome aboard, Secretary Murphy.
Mitch, it's great to be with you and with everybody. It is good to be with my former Pentagon colleague, General Mike Murray. Sir, it's good to be with you, and thanks for the great work you do for Army Futures Command. And obviously, Sir Carlton Smith, General, it's great to be with you, and thanks for being part of this incredible show. We really appreciate it. You know, when our two great nations are combined and working together, there's nothing we can't accomplish together. And so I'll have to go to Sir Carlton Smith first, if you don't mind. How will the integrated review impact British Army modernization and its transformation policies?
Well, Secretary, thank you very much indeed for your very warm welcome. I'm delighted to be able to join such a distinguished panel this morning. Well, let me tell you that the outcome of the integrated review in the UK is going to put a rocket up the modernization of the British Army. And if we get this right over the next 5 to 7 years, and I see no reason why we won't get it right, my ambition is that what emerges is, for its size and for its scale, probably the most modernized army on the planet, and certainly the peer-leading warfighting capability in Europe. And so I'm particularly pleased with the outcome, not least for the first time in a generation, the government's priorities has actually been matched by new and real money to put behind this. And it feels like that inflection moment when we're going to transform the force and leave behind much of the specifics that impacted our structures and our culture around major campaigning in Iraq and Afghanistan. We'll be leaving the coin era behind us and moving, therefore, away from a sort of single binary organizing principle, which was all around the warfighting division, to a world that's much less binary today, to an army that's more expeditionary and underpins our political rhetoric around a global Britain to maximize the opportunities that have come with us departing the European Union, and an army that's matched probably to the strategic moment and the challenge of a new form of land competition that's really associated with the information age rather than that of the industrial age, which is still the prevailing feature around our doctrine, our structures, and the manner in which we view the integration of our capabilities. And I think it's also going to recognize the changing nature and distribution of global power, particularly the reorientation of the United States, for us Europeans, recognizing that you're not only a transatlantic nation, you have throughout your history also been a Pacific nation. And of course, armies and soldiers have been based in the Philippines and places like Sumatra long before they were ever in the Middle East or indeed landed in Normandy. It's going to be an army that recognizes the changing nature of systemic competition and its ubiquity, and the rapid technological changes that are impacting all our personal and our professional lives. And what that means is that the pace of change is rendering legacy systems obsolete ever more rapidly. And it's also giving rise, of course, to the growth and proliferation of a much richer mix of transnational challenges. I mean, I think the crux of the issue for the British Army in taking the conclusions through the review is we're migrating from an industrial age capability, skill set, and culture to one that's going to be much more optimized for an information age challenge, which means it'll be more global, more expeditionary, more networked and digitally connected, probably much more specialist as a result, and it'll have to be much more lethal and much better protected. Because we're also seeing that our potential adversaries have been to school over the balance of the last 20 years, and closer to home here in Europe, Russia has taken time out clearly to optimize its hybrid sub-threshold asymmetric suite of capabilities, because it knows it won't prevail if it confronts conventionally clearly, particularly an American army in the field that was designed to defeat Group Soviet forces Germany along the inner German border. So that is the war that we think we're unlikely to fight, but we'll have to continue to deter. And now we need to optimize the force for the constant competition of sub-threshold hybrid conflict, which is the game that's challenging us week by week, month by month. And that, of course, is going to lead to a different suite of capabilities, a different challenge for our people by way of upskilling them, and probably a very different feel to our relationship with our principal capability providers, where we've routinely dealt with 3 or 4 big industrial primes. They've built our tanks, our helicopters, our long-range artillery and rocket systems. But we need, again, another mix of small and medium enterprises who are these tech startups who are going to give us the tech edge to prevail in the digital age. And that, I think, is what we've been after through the review. And that's fortunately what has emerged, an army matched for the challenges of the digital age.
Yeah, thanks. I can agree with you more. There's no doubt the shift to the information age, and I have the great opportunity. I serve on the BA board, so the BA Systems Board, the U.S. subsidiary, and we have partnerships where we invest in small businesses, these entrepreneurial businesses that are trying to solve these incredible challenges. But there's no doubt that when the UK and US come together and learn from each other, and I always joke that God gave you 2 ears, but only 1 mouth for a reason. So I appreciate your comments, and I'm going to get right back to you. General Mike Murray, I'm not going to ask you about the NFL draft in Ohio State, where Justin Fields is going to be drafted on Thursday night. I apologize that I digressed with your background there, but we obviously got the top line with the new administration on where our budget's going to be moving forward. What challenges do you think that presents? And also, we have 6 priorities, modernization priorities with Army Futures Commands and the Army, which is synced. Do you see that changing or shifting at all from your perspective at Army Futures Command?
Mr. Secretary, it's great to see you. It's always good to have a small chat. And before we get there, so it's I listened to what General Mark said, and actually, General, I would take it as a challenge that the British Army is going to be the most modern army in 7 years. So we'll see, would be my response to that. And I would just echo what you said, Mr. Secretary. Is matter of fact, General Mark's deputy was in my headquarters, spent a day with us, I think it was last week or the week prior. And so the connection between, especially the British Army and the United States, has always been strong. This coming fall, participate, I think, in my 6th General Officer Roundtable. We sit down and we talk modernization, not only from a material standpoint, but as the General mentioned, from a science and technology standpoint, and from an innovation standpoint, and from and the one thing I would say about modernization is most people go right to the material. And as the General mentioned, it's also how we will fight in the future. It's how we'll organize structurally for that new future. And then I think importantly, it's the talent we're going to need for that future. And there's lots of things going on that we can get to later in the question and answer. On the budget, we know what 22 looks like. We don't know yet what when we build Palm 23, 27. And you know better than I do the cycle that we operate here in the building, and it's really matched the congressional cycle. So we have a 23, 27. It's probably against an unrealistic top line. So, I tell people all the time, it's too early to tell the impact, but there are things that I think will remain constant. And you mentioned a couple of them is the Army's commitment to the 6 modernization priorities. I mean, we remain firmly committed with the last 3 years. I think it's been now we've gone through alternatively called deep dives or night courts to figure out how to fully fund those modernization priorities. And the Army will remain committed to those modernization priorities, not because we're stubborn, it's because we've done the homework and the modeling and analysis to know that they truly will make a difference in that future fight that General Mark talked about. And he's absolutely right. It's not fighting the last war. It's how do you prepare for the next war? And so we're doing extensive modeling right now, not in 2021, but really out into the future with imagined capabilities on both red and blue side to really figure out, what the most important capabilities are going forward. We'll also remain within those 6 modernization priorities, there's 31 plus 4 signature systems or signature efforts that we will probably most likely stay committed to. And when it comes to budget, I tell people all the time, it matters greatly how deep the cut is, if there is in fact a cut, but it also matters how long that cut will last. And so we're kind of at the point right now waiting on some guidance to understand the full impact of a reduced top line, if that in fact, and I think the assumptions are probably correct, it will be a reduced top line for DOD. We know what 22 looked like. We managed to protect everything in 22, and we're just waiting to see where we land in 23, 27 to how we protect. And General Mark also mentioned legacy systems. And so we're taking a hard look at legacy systems. But what people have to realize is that, when you completely divest is what most people would like to see us do. A system without a replacement on board, you do create some near-term risk, and you have to balance that risk, that near-term risk versus, the far-term risk of not having the resources to invest in that future capability.
Yeah, no doubt. And, General Sir Mark, I'm a former hockey player, and one of the great hockey players was Wayne Gretzky. And he said, you have to pass the puck not where people are, but you pass the puck where they're going to be. So, as General Murray talks about, the modernization, how we have to drive that and strength, and most importantly, readiness, that we have to be ready to fight tonight. But if I could turn to you, General Sir Mark Carlton Smith, and ask, Project Convergence, how is that going to drive modernization from your perspective within the British Army? And I love the competition that we're already saying here this morning, but how would that drive that? And could you walk us through?
Well, it's an incredibly important headline, Convergence, because the scale and the ambition, and indeed the visibility of Project Convergence, is a great convener. And we all know that, one of our principal USPs is that we want to be part of one team. That's one of the great asymmetric advantages we have over countries like, Russia, Iran, etc., who find it very difficult, of course, to gather coalitions of like-minded friends. But if we're actually going to give that tangible military substance, we know that we're going to have to converge in order to be able to integrate these capabilities. And my sense is, of course, that we're all viewing this as a tech arms race of one sort or another. We've got a sense as to what the technological horizon today feels like. We've definitely got the imagination together, I think, as to how we might apply militarily some of these emerging breakthrough technologies. And the trick then will be how actually we harness it materially and integrate it together, particularly if we are going to be reliant in some extent on a single sort of AI cloud-based platform, which enables all of the contributing factors to genuinely engage in multi-domain operations, which really is a multi-domain integration challenge rather than an application challenge. And I think if we get that right, we're not talking about simply ancillaries to the main force or simply accessorizing how we do our business. We're probably talking about some really material fundamental changes that technology will offer. And it's through the prism and the regulating framework of convergence that we get after the R&D, the experimentation, and the application possibilities around all these groundbreaking technologies, including in domains which we, the land force, are not necessarily as routinely familiar, such as cyber, of course, and increasingly space. And it's hard to imagine that those two particularly don't become, in a sense, the common lexicon around which we hang some rather more specific land-based systems. So I think it's a fantastic headline. It gives real momentum. Because there's a plan, it gives us something to organize ourselves around and a discipline and the ability to resource identified and agreed priorities. And of course, then to be able to measure our progress. So, you know, as we accelerate this journey, convergence for me probably is the critical campaign.
Yeah, no doubt when you talk about the great convening authority and that prism to really drive innovation and the tax arms race. And, you know, for those, you know, who are not within our profession, you know, we work together hand in glove, we compete, but it is to make sure that we have the strongest militaries in the world to deter war. We are the reluctant warrior. We are not trying to be aggressive, but we can have our heads in the sand and act like there are not folks out there who are trying to do our families harm and to keep them safe. So I appreciate the perspective. General Murray, let me go to you. How about the prism of convergence? How will that drive modernization within the Army and within DoD from your perspective?
Yeah, so thanks, Mr. Secretary. And convergence, as you know, was one of the key tenets of multi-domain operations. And so, you know, so we actually started this journey back in 2018. It took me a little while to catch on. So convergence, as people variously describe it, as a demonstration, an exercise, an experiment. I prefer to think of it as a learning campaign. So we did the first iteration last fall, and we started off with, these are the problems we're trying to solve. And last fall, it was connecting sensors and shooters in a much more rapid fashion. And I guess the tagline that goes along with Project Convergence 20 is we took a process of connecting a sensor to a shooter, a process that normally takes tens of minutes, and we're able to do it in tens of seconds. And that really gets back to, I think one of the first things you got to do is you begin to think about what that future may look like, right? And the first thing you got to do is say you're wrong, because there's no way you can say this is what it will look like. It's what it could look like. And you know, some of the things that we're seeing is this need for increased speed, not only of action, but also of decision making. And so I think, you know, a commander on a future battlefield, to achieve that, you know, and you're right, it's all about deterrence, that can sense first, understand first, decide faster than an opponent, therefore act faster than an opponent. I mean, that is going to be a decisive advantage for any future commander. And the other thing I think is going to be true in the future is, you know, the amount of information available to a commander today is just overwhelming. And that's only going to get worse, I guess you could say, or better, depending on whether you think more information is better or worse. And so the tools that help that understand first piece of this is a lot of the things we're working on in Project Convergence. Last year, we did it on a shoestring. This year, the important thing is it's joint by design. And so we started with all four of the services, actually all five of the services now with the Space Force, and we've just recently begun to have some conversations with them. And so we're really focused on, once again, starting with problem statements or challenges we face, and then working together as a joint force to try to solve that, to do basically the same thing really across the continuum. So there's a use case set up for competition, and it's all about situational awareness and situational understanding, and understanding what that picture that commander is looking at. Through crisis, which we're modeling integrated air missile defense, and then into competition, where we'll do some more sensor to shooter work. And then importantly, and one of the reasons I have 2 L&Os in my headquarters, and one of them is Colonel Pete Little from the British Army in 22. And this is one of the things that Chris Stickel and I had a long conversation with, is we'll bring the British Army and the Australian Army into Project Convergence 22. And it really, you know, if you just step back for a minute and look at Project Convergence, really what we're trying to do is help the joint staff understand the JADC2 construct, because right now it's just a construct and a concept. Is how do we actually put that into application and also inform the joint warfighting concept. And then ultimately in 22 with bringing our closest allies and partners, put a C in front of JADC2 and put a C in front of the joint warfighting concept, because Pete's got almost a famous quote now that we know we're going to fight together in the future. Therefore, we must train, exercise, and learn together in the present. So, and that's not the exact quote, but it's pretty close, and I think it's a good one.
Yeah, no doubt. We train like we fight, and I appreciate that. General Sir Mark, you know, we talked about, and you mentioned, you know, the 5 domains, you know, air, land, sea, space, cyber, and cyber is so critically important. We know in the UK, unfortunately, even civilians were killed with a cyber attack when you had a hospital that was shut down. People unfortunately died in the civilian sector. But there's no doubt that, you know, even with the coronavirus, people are more working from home. That digital footprint. When we look at the Pentagon, when we look at our intellectual property, the great thing about the UK and US, we have strong militaries, but we also have strong economies. And those economies need to be growing now that we're getting back to work. What do you see the challenges on the cyber domain, and how it affects how you train and how you protect what you're doing with your forces?
I think the principal strategic challenge for both our nations is the degree to which we think some regulating framework is necessary and indeed even possible. Or is cyber something whereby that genie is out of the bottle? Any idea of a digital World Health Organization that might set some boundaries and some thresholds and act as the arbiter of the application of cyber in some legislated manner, whereby we extend from rules of the road for its routine use all the way up to rules of engagement with respects to cyber. It is an area that our policy teams are finding exceptionally challenging, but without at least some definition about what the application of cyber, either offensively or defensively, might mean for us all, one finds oneself in an indefinable space whereby another entity who won't respect, in a sense, some of those natural thresholds and boundaries, of course, enjoys an exponential advantage really from the outset. And that's probably a gap that one will never thereafter close. So that at the strategic level. I think in terms of developing the capability, it's competing for a small pool of exceptionally talented and therefore highly prized people who are world leading and world beating in this space, but want to plow that trade on behalf of their nation, their army, and the nation's security and defense, as opposed to doing it in Silicon Valley or in our own tech parks, whereby they'll earn 10 times as much. Their ability to feel rewarded and satisfied in terms of doing well by their nation, of course, is that much less. And so working out how to incentivize what is still a growing, young, maturing sector into recognizing that they may fundamentally, in some respects, in the future have one of the most important roles to play in terms of keeping our nation safe. And these may well be people who culturally and by virtue of their backgrounds wouldn't naturally incline, certainly to working for the army, maybe even working for the Department of Defense. So there is a sort of cultural bridge that I think we need to build into that sector. And the third piece, I think, is to be realistic that It's a big problem. You can either try and tackle the whole thing as one enterprise, which may defeat us, or tackle it incrementally and be very clear about what our near, medium, and long-term cyber priorities will be, and then really get after them. I, for a while, have been speculating, even publicly here in the UK, as to whether we as a country haven't already had our cyber 9/11, but you know, we don't even know that yet. And buried and secreted deep into our systems already, as a result of decisions made, you know, 10, 15 years ago with respect to 2G, 3G, 4G, let alone 5G, we have already baked in a strategic vulnerability.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I have time for one last question. So, Joe Murray, I'm gonna let you close here if it's okay. What do you see on the horizon? And by the way, on the cyber, I'm on the cyber commission with Senator Angus King, who's in this, what we call our Senate Armed Services Committee, and Congressman Mike Gallagher, former Marine, who's on that House Armed Services Committee. And you know, we see this as a whole nation approach, not a whole government approach, but those international norms where we have accountability. We just made some changes on the last National Defense Authorization Act to have a new national cyber director, and we're going to be changing Sarbanes-Oxley, our law here in America, to put some more onus on cyber hygiene in the C-suite in corporate boards, like we saw with accountants and auditing back in the day, because it's critically important that it is a public-private partnership and it is a whole nation approach to this. But General Murray, if I could just conclude, what are you most excited about, whether it's the partnership with the UK, and where do you see this moving forward, and what should we all be on the lookout for and the audience here with the American Future series?
So, I mean, I think that, you know, I'm obviously excited about the partnership, and it's, you know, two like-minded nations trying to solve some of the challenges that you brought up, especially the last one, I think. And I think General Sir Mark talked about this up front, is, you know, it's amazing what a coalition of the like-minded nations can accomplish. And I do think that's, like he said, one of our key asymmetric advantages. You know, and I would just tag on to what he said, and I think it's beyond cyber, and I do agree it has to be a whole of nation effort. I do think the challenges are there. I agree with them 100%. Is our biggest challenge may already be in place, just waiting to be activated, and so it's a fairly scary frontier, and I think it's worthy, just like I think, you know, the application of artificial intelligence on a future battlefield has ethical concerns. Cyber also has a lot of concerns from a privacy standpoint and from the American public, and I'm sure it's the same in the UK. You know, and the debates are ongoing, and that's all very healthy. But I would just caution everybody that there are other nations out there where this debate has already happened, and they are in execution, not in a debate phase. And so, you know, this can't begin soon enough to figure out, you know, how we're going to address what is a very significant problem for our nation, and obviously for the UK as well. And the talent piece of it, which is really, I think, part of the cyber discussion in terms of the young men and women we're bringing into the United States Army, I think goes beyond cyber as well. And so if we're going to have a digital future, if we're going to be a digital Army, we've got to have digital experts in uniform with us at the forward edge of the battlefield. General Sir Mark talked about, you know, cloud technologies, cloud at the edge, computing at the edge, coding at the edge. And that's part of the talent that we have just begun to develop inside of our formations. And the amazing thing is the assumption going in was always, you're going to have to go out and find that talent. You're going to have to go out and you know, steal that from the commercial market. And there couldn't be anything further from the truth. And so we just started our first cohort. We have 24 spaces in our pilot program for coding. We had well over 2,000 applicants of currently serving soldiers sign up for that within 2 weeks. So we have the talent, but it's, you know, it's more than just the cyber piece of it. It's how do we become a tech savvy military for the future? Because as technology accelerates, and it's going to continue to accelerate at an accelerating pace, You know, how do we keep up with that from a material standpoint? You know, how we look at modernization, but also more importantly, or at least as importantly, is from the types of young men and women that we're bringing into the United States Army. And then importantly, as we kind of talked about, how do we retain that talent and not immediately lose it to a higher paying job someplace?
Yeah, no doubt. And whether it's the United States or the UK, you know, their demographics are destiny. There's less high school graduates. There's less young folks coming through the ranks. So it is a even more competitive nature to recruit this incredible talent. And in America and our forces, you know, it is less than 1%, you know, that are serving. And so, General Mike Murray, thank you so much for joining us. General Sir Mark Carlton Smith, thank you for this incredible partnership, for joining us this morning on the American Future Series, and for all you do to uphold our common values and our shared beliefs in a greater world, and to be able to stand there shoulder to shoulder with our nations for the next generations. So, gentlemen, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. And Mike, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed for inviting me to participate in a great program. Thank you.
And Mark, great to see you too. Mr. Secretary, thank you. Thanks to everybody out there. Great.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
That was amazing, huh?
Yeah, it really was. It's just it's not something I'm involved with on a regular basis every single day. And to listen to them, and you think, oh my gosh, it just has so much what I call wow factor. It just every day to them, but to those of us that are not doing this every day, it really is fascinating. I could sit and listen to them all day, really.
Well, yeah, and the order of magnitude of the challenge that they deal with the General Murray was talking about having 2,000 people apply
Oh, I know.
to participate in this effort, et cetera, is an example in only 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Sort of the magnitude of the challenge that they deal with is fascinating. We all talk about, and they've touched on this, you know, if only 1% of our population serves at any one time, and only 7% of our population have ever served, right?
Yeah, which when I heard that statistic some time ago, that just totally blew me away. I would have guessed it was like 20%, 1 out of every 5 or something like that.
So it's a very small percentage,
7%.
and we have a smaller population than our near peers.
Right.
Then the opportunity for us to collaborate more and more between the military and the commercial sector becomes more and more important. We have to leverage that capability more so than our near peers, say the Chinese.
Right.
And then we also have to work together more. So having, you know, basically the head of the British Army with the head of our innovation organization for our Army, the 4-star that runs the Army Futures Command, having them talk is an honor, and it is the sort of the whole purpose of what we're doing here.
Absolutely.
You know, we hope that we can provide a bridge that connects those folks. The more they interact, the more they talk, they share their experiences, they share their challenges, they share their resources and capabilities, their lessons learned. Then the better we can secure our nation's national security. And we've had that happen. The classic example was Lieutenant General Neil Thurgood and Lieutenant General Sharpie over with NATO, et cetera, and some others. They've spoken. They continue to stay in contact. I understand that they, you know, it helps forge a bond, greater bond and connectivity. You know, a lot of people sort of think some of these things, these meetings, is that, well, they're nice, they're good, but an outcome where people get to know each other, relationships are initiated and formed, and people continue to work together and collaborate is really meaningful. And that's amazing to have these 2 gentlemen.
Oh, it's huge.
And to have Secretary Murphy moderate that discussion was.
And one of the things that I always share on my keynote is we live in a world, you know, as we build champions, but we forget the idea. You know, you do it through courage, commitment, character, compassion, and not confrontation, but conversation. And we have become a world of confrontation instead of a world of conversation. And this was conversation.
Having a conversation about a shared
civil,
need.
Civility. How special is that, huh?
That's fantastic. That's wonderful.
Great concept.
It's a great concept. So that was an honor to have the 2 of
It
them,
sure was.
and to have the Honorable Secretary Patrick Murphy moderate. That was fantastic. We're going to take a little 10-minute break, I think. And
Sounds
we're going to
good.
come back. We'll have more to follow. Look forward to catching up with everybody here in about 8-10 minutes.
Good. We'll see you then.